Star Trek books. They've been around for decades. Join us, the Trek ladies, Kavura and Jen, as we discuss the novels one at a time. Welcome to the Ladies Trek Library. Hello, and we're back with Ladies Trek Library. I'm Kavura, and I'm here with Jen. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Kavura. I'm really happy to be back.
All right, great. So this time we are talking about Metamorphosis by Jean Lorrah. It's the first giant novel for Star Trek The Next Generation. And I'll read what it says on the back. Unexplained gravitational disturbances summon the Enterprise to the planet Elysia and the android Lieutenant Commander Data to a date with destiny. For on this alien world, he will be drawn into an impossible quest, leading him to consequences both heartwarming and disastrous as he finally dares to pursue his fondest desire, to become human. And so I'll just preface by saying this book was published in 1990, so it was while The Next Generation was still on the air, and it takes place right after the episode Measure of a Man, where they determine that Data is his own person and not property of Starfleet. So a large part of the book was Data going on this quest with another woman. I guess I should say just to have this preface. They go to the planet Elysia, and they were trying to find out what's causing these power surges. And Data gets stuck there on an island with this woman named Elysia, and they wind up going on this quest together. Elysia was actually expecting to meet someone else, and she runs into Data and thinks he's the one that's supposed to go on the quest with her. And Data cannot use his communicator. It's not working for some reason, so he can't contact the Enterprise. So he stays with her and goes on this quest, which is like a journey that you're doing because you want to ask something from the gods, the Elysian gods that the people on this planet worship. So what do you think of this quest that the two of them went on?
Well, I love this quest. This novel, what was neat about it for me is that it fused two things that I love, which is science fiction and fantasy. So the quest part was very much like a fantasy novel. And then, of course, it's in the bigger story of Star Trek science fiction. But the quest was basically Data and Elysia who were going. Elysia was on a quest to her gods, and people in her planet, Elysia, they can, I guess certain people are picked to go on a quest, people who are deemed worthy, and to make a request of the gods. And her request was that her I don't know if you want to call it country, but the land that she comes from, which is called Atreides, be united with another one of the lands, Tussis, because they did a lot of trading and they were in a mutually beneficial relationship. And it would have been better for the people that they be united as two lands. And so Data's going along on this quest with her, and they're inside of a mountain, and they face all kinds of obstacles and challenges, just like many fantasy quests. I mean, a lot of it reminded me Lord of the Rings. So I thought it was great.
Yeah, it does have elements from other stories. And I mean, of course, there are other stories where they go on a type of quest. So it's not like that was original, but it was neat in this story. I thought it did go kind of long. I mean, we know that it's supposed to be a long and arduous journey, but I think the author didn't really have to get so detailed with it because it's kind of, it was almost half the book. It was good. I'm not saying it wasn't, but yeah, it just seemed kind of long for me.
No, I can agree with you on that because I remember at one point thinking, wow, this quest is really long.
And like,
is it coming to an end soon?
Is it going to be the whole book? Yeah. But what
so maybe that was part of it being, maybe because it was supposed to be a giant novel, maybe she intentionally made that section larger to, to make it longer than the normal Star Trek novel, because it is 371 pages, which is, I guess most of the paperbacks at that time, they're somewhere around 200. So,
Yeah, it's a lot longer, definitely. But what do you think was the, like, we'll say the purpose of the quest besides what they stated in the book? I mean, Thelia was, she wanted the two lands to be united, and Data had wanted to go because he wanted to ask the gods, like, what are these power surges? There are surges going on in space that present a danger to some of the ships. But besides that purpose, the author wanted these two to go on the quest. It was sort of a way for them to get to know each other and of course to learn more about Thelia, to have the introduction of her. And I think also, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
To like, especially for Thelia, to get her to get to know Data. And the gods, as we see in this book, are pretty much all powerful. And it's something, the Elysians worship them as gods. We don't really know what they are, but they're these super powerful beings. And they want Thelia to find out that Data is not human, because they have all these things. Data gets injured and she can see the blood or the fluid running from his hand, and so Data has to explain what he is, and he tried not to at first, but it kind of turns out that he has to tell her because she's too suspicious. And so it's, and he tells her, like, well, when she gets the idea about a doll, and then she says, like, she has these ideas that dolls are evil because her mother told her this story. But she comes to learn from Data that a doll that comes to life doesn't have to be evil, and she starts to like him, and he starts to like her. He always sees her as being from a more primitive culture, but he sees that she is really a woman of deep virtues and very deep morals, and she's a princess, leader of her people. So what do you
Yes.
think?
What, yeah, I mean, obviously, other than the results of this, which is that, Data, the gods grant Data his deepest desire, which he did not express to them in words, but they knew that was to become human. But the purpose of the quest also was, on the one hand, um, Thelia really shows what kind of a person she is. Well, actually, if you back up, on the Enterprise prior to them arriving at this planet, Data had a kind of a bet with Dr. Pulaski and some of the other crew members, where she was saying that even though she agreed that Data was sentient, that people who, you know, primitive people would not take him to be a human, that they would be able to know that he's not human. And so there was this bet running as far, and they had they were like, well,
Right,
when,
yeah.
when we have this next opportunity, we'll see, whether this is true or not. And so Philia is kind of that next opportunity, because initially she does think that Data is human, and she just thinks of him as looks different because he comes from a different land on the same planet as her. When she begins to realize through some of the things that happen that he isn't, that he is he is man-made, that he's an android, even though she doesn't know that word. And she becomes afraid of him because, like you said, she, had this childhood story of the puppet that came to life and it was evil. So on the one hand, it's a test for Athelia to overcome her fears, and to see Data for who he really is and put aside her fears, and accept him. And she rises to that challenge and is able to overcome her fears and recognize that Data, although is not human, is someone she can trust and is not evil. And then at the same time, this is, the opportunity for the bet to be played out. And we see that Dr. Pulaski in this case kind of loses the bet because she did think he was a human person, before certain events revealed that he wasn't. So it was two different things really happening in the quest there.
Yeah, that is true about the bit. And also I think because Data becomes human later on, so this was a way to just showcase what Data can do as an android, the super strength and and being able to walk at the bottom of a river, and the fact that he can't float, and but things like that, just to show the super strength and the not having to sleep, because as a human he's going to be completely different. So it was a way to show that. um I guess, like, if some of the readers hadn't seen every episode of the show and didn't know as much about him, and this was only during the second season anyway. And yeah, Jean Laura, of course, we also reviewed her book, Survivors, and she has written a few other original series novels. But in Survivors, she also talked about Data having to take in nutrients, which they never said on the show, but somehow, Jean Laura, for some reason, thinks that Data would have to take nutrients in. But so that one is almost like humans that we don't expect from him. But anyway, that's another aspect to it. And so then when Data does become human, so when they finish the quest, and then Thelia asks the gods to unite her land, and so the gods say it will be done. And then for Data, um, and at first he was going to ask them about the power surges, but then he decides, and it was sort of Thelia who convinced him to do this. He decides to ask the gods to make him human. And by this point, he really does believe that the gods probably have the power to do that, because he has seen them do so much while they were on their quest. And so the gods made him human. And oh yeah, of course, which other things we find out later in the book. But I mean, I know I read this book when it first came out, and that was the big thing. That was the way the book was publicized. This is a book where Data becomes human. And it's interesting that that's what I was expecting when I read it the first time, but it was like it doesn't even happen until halfway through the book, which is very strange. Like, but so when he does become human, though, what do you think of his experiences and what happens to him?
I thought it was really fascinating what she did, and I'll say, not that I don't like Data as a character, but some people who are Next Generation fans, they love Data. Data's like a very popular character. He has a big following. A lot of people just love anything that Data is in. And I went into this not disliking Data, but he's not my favorite character, and I don't particularly like. I'm not a really into Data everything. So I didn't know how I would feel about a story that's so centric on Data. But I've liked everything that Jean Laura has written, and I really like her style of writing. So I thought I would probably enjoy it, and I really like how she uh, described Data's experiences becoming human, because it really wasn't what I was expecting. It was a lot of things that I don't think about because I'm human. So it doesn't, I don't sit around thinking about these things. But, just the really mundane things, like what's it like to feel a pain, or be hungry or tired, and not, if you've never felt those things before, you might not recognize what it is. Um, and of course there's a section about, romantic feelings, and not really knowing how to handle that. Um, and just a lot of other things that, I guess the things that I was expecting more were in there as well, which is like, um, coping with the fact that, his human brain cannot process things the way an android can. So he can't accomplish nearly as much as he did before, and that type of thing. But for me, it was more like the mundane things, and like, oh, I have to like comb my hair, and I need to like, I might sweat, so I have to like take a shower, and I can't just, pop into have the same uniform and have it be clean all the time. I have to like wash it because I'm sweating. So I thought that was really fascinating.
It was, and I thought Jean Laura did a very good job of this, because like you said, she did a lot of things that I wouldn't have thought of. And I thought it was neat because you know that she could not have interviewed someone. Like, she didn't find someone who just suddenly became human like Data did. So I mean, but I guess it's possible she could have read other science fiction books where this happened and maybe got ideas from that. I don't know, but yeah, it was great the way she had to have thought this out. She put so much into it, and even the idea of Data waking up from sleep and just being disoriented when he woke up, and that was scary to him because he had never experienced that before. It would be like if he, as an android, if he had been turned off and then turned back on, and then so he would be like, "What happened?" And I'm missing several hours from my memory, and so that must have been very frightening for him. And then the other things like having to shave and clip his nails, and he was thinking, "Wow, being human is going to take a lot of my time."
Yeah,
So
and then it made you think about how much time some of the stuff. I mean, you're just used to it because you have to do it, but you're like, yeah, you're right. It does take a lot of time to do this stuff. Um, and then another thing was the fact when you mentioned sleeping. He has to set an alarm so he doesn't oversleep. And he's got to set reminders for things because you don't people don't just. I mean, unless you have a really good memory, you're not going to necessarily remember all your appointments and stuff like that. So you have to, in the world of Star Trek, tell your computer, "Hey, remind me I've got to do this, and I got to wake up here." And he's not used to having to set reminders because it was in his brain before, and so that was interesting to think about too. Oh yeah, all these things that humans have to do, like write down or tell the computer to remind them, take notes. He had to do that, which he had never done before.
yes, and having the memory lapses now because everything had been stored in his brain and now he doesn't remember some things that he learned at the academy. And this is, what becomes an issue that, he realizes he has to be re-certified or requalified to do a lot of things in Starfleet. He has to learn, he has to take another test on working his station on the bridge, which he passed pretty easily, that one. And then he has to learn combat, hand-to-hand combat fighting, and he has to take a test with Worf. That one he's worried about, which I understand. And he has to learn shooting and target practice. And so yeah, all of those things too. His Starfleet career is on the line here, and of course he does kind of think about, well, maybe he might decide not even to stay in Starfleet. But I think he did want to. But it seems like that was some kind of a thought that he had at one time.
Yeah, because he wasn't sure that he had anything to contribute because he kind of thought, well, all these other people like Riker and Picard and Troy, they all have these valuable skills, and now that I'm not an android and I'm just a human who what do I have? I don't have anything special. I don't have anything to contribute. And of course, talking to Geordi and some of the other crew, he realizes that's not true. He still does have things to contribute, just in a different way. And also that, things that, he might say, oh, like he mentioned, Commander Riker, he's got this to contribute because, he's a good leader. And these are all things that you have to learn. So,
Yes, definitely. But the fact that he forgot about the thing about the Threskians. There's another alien race introduced in this book, the Threskians, and they have the Lieutenant Thraylin is a member of that race, and Data forgot something about that race that's real important that everyone who went to the academy knows. And so Data was pretty scared when he realized he had forgotten that he should know it. And I do kind of think that that's sort of a sign that they almost needed to put Data back through the academy, or at least go back through his courses again and like retake take all his tests from all his courses, because obviously he doesn't know everything anymore like he did as an android. But they never really mentioned doing that to him.
well, they kind of did. So remember, because he said he realized that the things that he remembered from the academy were classes that he had actually participated in. And the things that he did not remember were apparently the academy had done, or Starfleet had downloaded, I don't know, for lack of a better term, or uploaded information directly into his positronic brain. And he realizes that the things that were just uploaded are not things that he remembers, because I guess that was a
Okay,
past
that
would
was
be
the
like a,
that was the deal between the things he remembered and things he didn't remember. Yeah, that's right.
yeah. And then so he decides, okay, this means that all those things that were uploaded into my brain that I don't remember, I'm going to have to go and retake those courses. And so he starts out the process of reviewing all that material.
Okay, so he does go through that. So and then the
But he
other
didn't
the little
finish. He didn't finish
okay.
before the book ended. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But he didn't have to, as we'll get to in
Right.
a minute.
Right.
Um, and the fact that Dare, oh, and of course the now Jean Laura uses characters that she introduced in Survivors, and this book takes place after Survivors. But you didn't really have to read the other book before this one, but it does have the same characters, Daryl, Aiden, and his crew. And Daryl Aiden happens to be a former member of Starfleet, but not the rest of his crew. But they're mercenaries, and so but they're friends with Data, and Daryl offers to train Data in combat and target practice. And Dare noticed that Data is left-handed, which is interesting because Brent Spiner is left-handed. And
Oh, you know what? I should have thought. I didn't even consider that.
yeah, he is.
That must be why.
I kind of, well, I mean, I looked it up, but I mean, I think I kind of noticed in one episode, but you really, I mean, on the show, I heard that they tried to make it where Data is ambidextrous because one time you see him painting with both hands at the same time. But I think if you were really paying attention, you would probably see that he is left hand dominant anyway. But that was neat that the author threw that in. So he's left-handed. But as far as training with Dare, that was another thing I thought. Well, really, in this book, I think they didn't even need Daryl Aiden and his crew. So Jean Laura just wanted to throw them in, I guess, to use her characters and maybe to make the book more interesting. I think Daryl didn't have to be the one to train Data because it could have been someone else on the crew. But I mean, it was nice of him to do that and everything. And saying that Daryl had like he had the best record for target practice in Starfleet and his record still stands. It's amazing that that could happen. I almost say that that wouldn't really have happened after he had been out of Starfleet for so long.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the characters of Dare Aiden and his crew, they were kind of superfluous in this novel. They really didn't need to be in there. The scenes were in there, could have been other characters. I think she just threw them in because, well, one of the crew members is kind of a love interest for Data. So, but I mean, that could have been an Enterprise crew member. I guess she just wanted to include them since they were her original characters. And I like the scenes that they were in. But yeah, I agree. They didn't really serve a purpose. They weren't essential to the story or anything.
Okay, so let's go into like favorite parts or least favorite parts. What do you think?
Well, I did really like the quest, but as we mentioned, it was a bit long. So it's kind of near
Yeah.
the end was where I was like, okay, it's time for this quest to wrap up. Um, and the discovering the information. So we've talked about that part, and then on the backdrop of what's happening on the Enterprise is that this other planet, well, not other, it's three planets, but a race of people are they've contacted Starfleet and asked for help because they're being attacked by these people called the Conor or Connor. Not sure how have you been pronouncing that?
Conor, that's the way I
Conor.
say it.
Okay. So you know, they go to, and then they find out eventually that the Conor are not they're not an alien species who are attacking these people. They're actually natives, but they are a group of people on the planet who have gained the ability of telepathy. And they believe that, well, it's not exactly telepathy, but um, they believe that anyone who is not telepathic, for lack of a better way to describe it, doesn't have a soul, and so they're killing all their fellow men and women, thinking that because they have no soul, they may as well be just like animals who deserve to die. So I found the part that was very interesting, trying to figure out who the Konar were and what their motivations were, and their ability. It's when I said it's not exactly telepathy, they kind of explain that it is an ability to communicate without words, but rather than telepathy, it's kind of like they're communicating on a different frequency. Um, they didn't, I mean, scientifically, I don't know how she didn't really explain it, but it's kind of like, yeah, a different frequency.
Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah, something about
Yeah.
frequency, huh?
So, people who don't have this ability to recognize this, and the reason it's not telepathy is because um, they can't feel like the pain or the thoughts of other people the way a telepath can, like Troy or some of the Vulcans. It's just that they can talk to each other on this other frequency. Um, so it was really interesting trying to find out. I enjoyed that part. Trying to figure out who these aliens were and what exactly, how are they communicating, and with Data's help, and the Enterprise tries to find a means of communicating with them, because they believe that anyone who cannot communicate in the same way as them doesn't have a soul and is therefore not worthy of communication. So they have to find a way to be able to communicate with them on this frequency so that they will have a conversation with them. And I thought that was really interesting. It's kind of unique.
Okay, yeah, that was a different. It's interesting that was such a different part of the story. I mean, like you had the quest with Data and Thelia, and then it goes into the Enterprise gets called away to this other planet, Samdian, where they have these people called the Konor that are trying to take over them, and they say the Konor are very violent and everything, and has killed some of them. But that's like it's like a second story. I mean, it's yeah, a completely different part of the book. So and we of course we are going into spoilers in this and all. So yeah, they find out that the Konor are not really telepathic, and it was interesting the way they did all that. So we find out that Data was, let's see, not human. I wanted to go ahead and get into this other part, but so yeah, so that well, the thing is with the Conor, you had this whole story, and they say that it's going to deteriorate because the Enterprise crew eventually like couldn't do anything because of the Prime Directive, because they find out that the Conor are actually part of the same race as the Samdians, so this is more like a civil war, so they can't get involved because of the Prime Directive.
Yeah, so they find out, and that was a little stretching the Prime Directive, because it's like the Konor did come from, it is the same race of Samdians, but they did come from another planet. It's three planets, and they basically took over another planet, and were, then going to go on to the third. So I'm kind of like, well, okay, so I guess they're the same species biologically, but because one species is, they're biologically the same, that they can just come to another planet and basically indiscriminately wipe out the entire population. And but Starfleet can't do anything because the Prime Directive. I don't know if I bought that, but
Yeah, and so the fact that other things happen in the stories, and in the story they Data goes back and talk to the gods of Elysia again, and then finds out that basically that it was all a dream, that Data never really was human. And this is such a big letdown in the book. It was like, oh, but even though you kind of know why she did it, the author, because on the TV series, Data, it's not like Data would ever remember having been human, so you have to make it where all the characters have to go back to net zero, where so a major change like being human, I mean, of course we knew going in that he wouldn't be able to stay human, but to find out that it really, like, that it never even happened was a pretty big thing.
well, I don't think that's not how I interpreted it. So,
Okay.
Data goes back to the planet Elysia because he discovers that he is in love with Thelia, and he can't think about anyone else. So Counselor Troy tells him, "Oh, you have to go talk to her about it." which, okay, I don't know if she would really say that. But, I kind of imagined her saying, hey, you know what? Falling in love is part of being human. And, you can't really, this woman there's other plans for her. You have to move on. You'll get over it. But
Well,
he
even
goes,
as far as being in love with her too, wasn't it like they didn't even mention that until it was several days after Data had been human and he was having these dreams and then he found out he's in love with Delia. It just seems like he would have known that from the beginning.
yeah, it's so that part, yes, yeah, he doesn't
Yeah.
really realize it until he, later on he's having these dreams. But he goes back to Elysia to, declare his love to Thelia. And then he learned, and part of the issue also is he has realized that one of these things that he forgot about the Konar, that he didn't remember from the upload to his brain that happened at Starfleet Academy, has caused an issue. Whereas if he had not been human, if he had been an android, he would have seen something that he didn't see as a human, and that being an android in that case may have saved these people. But he goes back to Elysia, finds out that um, Thelia is engaged to Sharn, who is the prince from the neighboring kingdom, who's the one that he was supposed to go on the quest. She was supposed to go on the quest with, and not Data. And he also finds out that Thelia had told him about this, the kiss of bonding, which is like a fantasy story told in her land about a woman who can kiss a man and he's in love with her from that point on, forever. And it turns out that she has the kiss of bonding, and at the last time she see him, she had given him a kiss, not realizing that because he was an android, she didn't know he was going to become human, that he would fall in love with her. So he realizes after hearing this that he's going to be doomed, for quotes, quote
Yeah.
unquote, doomed to being in love with her for the rest of his life, and he'll never. And then he realizes this is kind of not what he wanted out of being human, to be in this spell where he can never love anyone else. And he's like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to accept that. And the gods, when he goes to transport back to the Enterprise, he actually finds himself in the presence of the gods again. And to me, even though they're not exactly like Q, that's kind of the closest. They were like a Q-like race. They were like interdimensional beings. They didn't have a physical form, and they had these, unbelievable powers like Q. And for them, actually, I think maybe the aliens from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, I saw that too. That they were like the prophets, the wormhole aliens.
Yes, like the Wormhole Aliens, where there's no time does not have the same continuity it does for us. So past, present, and future are all interwoven in different timelines. And what they were showing Data was that, not that it was all a dream, but a different timeline. This is one timeline. This is what the world would have looked like on this timeline had we made you human. This is what. And then he realizes, I'm glad that they didn't, because this problem with the Konar, being in love with Thalia, I got to experience it, but that's not what I want now. So I didn't see it as it's a dream, but like, hey, we gave you the opportunity to see another timeline of what the possibility could have been.
Okay. I mean, I kind of did see it as a dream, but also as a possibility because they did kind of they did let Data see like what would have happened next, um if Data stayed human, then like the whole situation with the Konar would have deteriorated, about how the Ferengi and the Romulans would have gotten involved, and there would have just been this whole intergalactic war, which again I thought that was too much, but at least that was just something that the book just kind of glossed over and didn't really make it an issue, but they were showing Data like this is what could have happened. They did go into that. And
Yeah, that's one thing that I kind of didn't buy either. Like, okay, so because Data was on this timeline that they show him, where Data is human and he makes what we say is a human mistake, he forgot something. All this interplanetary war is going to happen, and it's like, that's kind of like saying, hey, the humans can't have to have an android all the time, because there were other humans that were in this, with Data when all that happened, and they didn't remember the same thing. So it's not completely his fault. It would have been anyone's fault who didn't remember. So just saying, hey, because we didn't have an android with us who wouldn't have forgot this one thing, there's interplanetary war. The whole universe is at war.
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah. And well, the other thing about the Konor situation was the telepaths. And oh, so what happens is after Data is made, well, basically, he's an android again after talking to the Elysians, and then they go back to the Konor situation, which really they're dealing with for the first time now, and then we find out that Data can hear the projections, the telepathic projections from the Konor, which he could, well, yeah, he could before as human, but now he can as an android. And because he hears their telepathic projections as an android, now he knows that they're not telepaths. That's basically that's everyone's clue that, oh, that the way they communicate isn't really telepathy. So that's another important aspect of Data being an android instead of being human.
yes, yeah,
So it's another way that it made a difference to this story.
that's true. Yeah, I forgot about that. So we
Yeah,
have. Oh, go ahead.
well, because of that, it was how they went investigated it and found out about that it wasn't really telepathy, that it was just a different frequency.
Yeah, I mean, but again, that's sort of the same. I kind of went where I felt like, oh, well, they're all like, hey, you know, being an, and I guess she meant to show like, hey, being an android, there's good things about it, and these are the positive things that happen. But at the same time, saying that is kind of like saying, oh, if the humans didn't have an android with them, all these bad things would happen. It's
It is
so.
still saying that, yeah. It's
Right.
I think it's supposed to try. It's getting Data to value being an android, but the thing is, he didn't remember being human at this point, right? Nobody knew that it had happened. So
Right.
it's like he didn't really come away learning anything, which I kind of felt like it's almost like it was just a waste almost. I mean, it only helps the readers. Like we see what would have happened if Data was human, but nobody else knows. So how did they benefit from it?
Yeah, I kind of wished when he went back that he had remembered, so then he would
Yes,
be like,
yeah,
"Oh, I knew what it was like to be human, and and I can appreciate being an android now because I've had that." But of course, like you said, the characters all have to go back into the sandbox exactly where they were, because otherwise it wouldn't fit in with the show, with Data, continuing to want to be human, and so because it's not canon. So yeah,
right.
she didn't have a choice about that. But one thing I thought was interesting, on Memory Alpha, uh, there's a little point there from Voyages of the Imagination, which is the big book about Star Trek books, where it says that the author commented, "Suffice it to say that the biggest thing readers object to was not put into the book by me." And that's all she says. And that really got me thinking, what is she talking about? Do you have any ideas?
I saw that too. No, I don't know. Is probably I mean probably the fact that it didn't happen, that nobody remembered it. I mean, I think it was probably that.
I thought that's a good idea. Yeah, that may be it. The other thing that I thought too was the romantic thing. That not that he was in love with Thelia, because that was kind of a spell that she put him under, but he did have this. He had a sexual relationship with one of the Daryl Aiden's crew. So maybe people didn't like that, and I thought maybe the editors had put that in, saying, "Oh yeah, we got to have some kind of love, intimacy thing now that he's human." But that was a pretty minor part of the book, so didn't really. But yeah, maybe it is the fact that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why she couldn't have said it, whatever she was talking about.
Right. I mean, the
Uh,
book was published like 30 years ago. I mean, the show's not on the air anymore. Can't you tell us? Well, if
Okay.
I ever meet her
Any?
at a convention, maybe I'll ask her.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I actually did see her a long time ago. I think it was right after this book came out, but I mean, I didn't. Well, I didn't even know about that back then. I don't think she mentioned it, but yeah. Anyway, so final thoughts.
I really liked it. I think it's a great story. It does have, some issues as most of them do, and I don't know that there's too many like perfect Star Trek novels out there. There are a couple that come close, but really good story. Even for someone like me who's not a huge Data fan, but if you are a huge Data fan, definitely one you should read. And despite the minor little flaws and the fact that maybe when you're reading the quest part you think it's a little too long, I think it's a really excellent novel and worth reading for sure.
Yeah, I thought so too. So I am a Data fan, and I do think this was a great book, and I do recommend it, even though it did have some problems, but I think it lives up to, being the first giant novel, so it had the expectation that it would be this great story, and I think it was. I think it was very well done.
Yes, I guess we can give it 2 thumbs up, or we never have come up with our own rating system, but
Yeah, we should. So for now, it's 2 thumbs up.